I'm sure everyone has noticed how terrible movie and television show writing has been lately, and similarly how bad video game stories have gotten in some cases. There are a number of reasons for this, but one of my pet peeves, and my biggest issue with modern writing, is more subtle than a lot of the normal critics will talk about. I'm tired of writers over-explaining things to the audience in lazy ways. So let's talk about that.
Black girl magic!
I'm Max Powers, and this is the 311 Griffin YouTube channel. Now, there may be a proper term for what I'm talking about, but if so, I'm unaware of it. However, I often find that writers will put awkward or uncharacteristic moments in their stories because they feel the need to explain something to their audience, and at least for me, it often detracts from the characters and the story. I'm going to use some examples to show both good and bad situations where this is done. First, in the F-14 versus Su-57 scene toward the end of Top Gun Maverick, we have both good and bad examples. In this clip, just be warned, I've installed the Better Sounds mod, and I'll actually put a link to the specific video where I got this from in the description. It's just the dogfight scene in Top Gun if the sounds were better, or if the gunshots were more realistic, something like that. I'll put that in the description. But here, when Maverick splits his throttles and kicks the rudder to turn his Tomcat faster, he says, "splitting the throttles." This is purely done to tell the audience what he's doing.
Splitting the throttles?
It is unlikely and uncharacteristic that Maverick would tell Rooster what he's doing in that moment. He would just fly the plane. You could argue that a person might say such things without thinking about it because they're stressed or nervous. However, this is really for the audience's benefit, and it's completely unnecessary. So actually, in this 2-second clip, we see a bad example and a good example because Maverick splits the throttles but tells the audience he's doing it for our benefit, and then he kicks hard port rudder but doesn't say it. He does say coming around, which is also unnecessary and uncharacteristic, and probably not something he would say. If we skip ahead a moment, we see a mostly good moment where the writing does not force Maverick to break or sacrifice his character. There are a lot of issues with the authenticity and the realism of this entire sequence, and I'm really having to force myself not to talk about those particular issues because that's not really what we're talking about. This is a good sequence cinematically. It looks good, it's got good pacing, it attracts the audience. It's just exciting, and even for me, I'm looking at all of the issues with the way the planes are flying and with what the people are doing tactically and how the weapons are working, and it just kind of bugs me that it's not very realistic, but I still like the scene, which is high praise for me. I just wanted to make that clear. But what happens here is that the audience is shown what Maverick is doing, but we're not told what Maverick is doing. Often in action movies, this is the preferred way to do it. The audience doesn't need to hear Maverick explain that he's extending the wings to get more lift at a lower speed, or that he's using all of his strength to push over the top of the climb to drop down behind the felon. We can just see that, and if we don't understand the details of what he's doing, or why it works that way, or how it's working, or why he's doing that tactically, it's okay, because we still see everything else that's happening, and through context we can understand that he's just trying to gain an advantage over his adversary. It's fine. It doesn't hurt the story for us to be unaware of the technical details, but it would hurt Maverick's character if he had to explain it to all of us. Now, I'd like to share a scene from the movie Master and Commander Far Side of the World to illustrate this a little bit better and try to drive the point home. This movie is one of the best when it comes to showing the audience the details instead of explaining it to them. It helps that it's a relatively accurate movie for what it's trying to portray as well. But in this scene, we're watching the crew exercise the great guns. You don't have to know that Captain Aubrey is known for training his crew on gunnery, and you don't have to know that he often buys extra powder out of his own pocket to ensure his crews can aim the guns well. You don't have to know that Dr. Maturin hates the gunnery practice. You don't have to know that the ship is small enough that the captain's own cabin has bulkheads that can be removed and put back before and during and after battles. Some of this is shown in the scene in ways that the audience can infer or assume the truth from, and take context clues to kind of understand the details of what's going on. And some of it doesn't even matter. And this scene is culminated perfectly when Aubrey has to ask Killick to repeat himself. In a modern movie, the audience would have to listen to Lucky Jack Aubrey explain to his steward that he can't hear very well because they were just firing cannon, which the audience already knows, and Killick certainly understands. It would have been a mortal wound to the character of Captain Aubrey and to Killick if it had been written that way. Instead, the audience gets to make a contextual inference between the gunnery practice and the bulkheads being restored to the captain's cabin, as well as the fact that Jack can't hear very well. We just get to understand what is going on instead of being told what's going on.
Kill it down. What do you have for us tonight?
Which is soused og's face.
Eh?
Which is soused og's face.
My favorite.
In modern stories, it seems writers often can't think of or don't want to bother thinking of ways to explain interesting or important details to their audience without words. The great benefit of video over books is that you can show your audience things and let them make the appropriate connection. When writers decide to explain everything to the audience, we wind up with shows and movies that you may as well skip and just go read a book. There are myriad problems with modern writing, for sure, but I'd certainly like to see writers get more subtle and clever with how they explain things to their audiences, and I think it would make their characters and their stories much better while avoiding the unfortunate reality of insulting their audience. I hope that makes sense. Ask me if you don't understand what I'm talking about. I'd be happy to try to explain it in a better way. Let me know your thoughts on explaining things to the audience versus showing things to the audience, and let me know kind of what your pet peeves are with modern writing. I'd be happy to hear about it. I've been Max Powers. This is the 311 Griffin YouTube channel. Thank you for watching.